Hello YouTube and welcome to another FarmVille 3 video. Today we are going to be discussing the topic of installing FarmVille on an iOS or Apple device and not being in one of the countries it's released from. There's been some concern that using an app store from another country is not the right thing to do, and none of us want to break the rules, and so this video is going to address that. So what I did is I actually contacted Apple, and I'm going to bring up my chat window with Apple. And as you can see, on December 16th, 2019 at 8:01 p.m., I was chatting with a gentleman named Guru Murthy. And he says, "Hi, my name is Guru Murthy. It's supposed to be, it looks like Murphy, but it's Murthy. Anyways, I'll be just a moment while I review the comments you provided," which I didn't really provide any. And he said, "Hey Scott, how you doing today? Please take note of the case number for this chat. But in case we get disconnected, blah, 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 blah." Anyways, I put, "How are you tonight? I have a quick question." He said he's doing good. "Thanks for your consent," which I didn't really consent to anything, so I'm not sure what that means. Anyways, he'll be glad to help me. Just let me know further. Anyways, I wrote down, "I live in Canada and I have a friend in Australia who plays a game on their iPhone from the Australian App Store. Is there any correct way for me to connect to the Australian App Store and download and install the app? Can I create a new Apple ID from the Australian App Store and install the app? The app is not currently in the Canadian App Store." Anyways, he says, "Okay, thanks for confirming it." Again, not sure what he's talking about. But then he says, "I see that you would like to know further possibilities to download a game which is available on the Australian storefront and needs further assistance." And I just tried to clarify and wrote, "I just want to know if it's okay for me to create a new Apple ID and set my country to Australia so I can install the app. I can't find any rules on setting my home app store." He says, "Thanks for bringing this to our attention. You have certainly reached the right place, and I assure you I will do my absolute best to have this resolved." I replied with, "Okay, great. I know how to do it. I just want to make sure I'm not breaking any Apple rules by setting my app store to Australia." Of course, all of you guys know I've been playing FarmVille 3 Animals on my iOS for many months now, living in Canada and installing it from another country. Anyways, he writes, "Sure, in this case, please know that you need a valid payment for the region to change the storefront and download any further application. And as we know, or I know, you don't need to choose a payment. You can just skip that step." I wrote, "Okay, but it's a free app, and I can choose to enter payment later, so I don't have to enter a payment type. Can I use a random address so I don't need any payments? If I don't need any payments, am I okay to do this?" He writes, "In this case, you will need a valid payment method and billing address to match your credit card company records." And then I reiterate again, "But I don't need to enter a payment. I can skip it." And I sent a screenshot of the screen where you can choose none for the payment. I can choose none. And he said, "Sure, it may help to create the Apple ID, but for security reasons, you will have to have a valid payment details to confirm any purchase on the account." And then I put, "So I don't need a credit card or billing address. It doesn't ask me for that. It lets me access the App Store with no verification. I just want to know if I'm not violating any Apple terms." He writes, "Glad to know that. However, here is an article to know more on creating the account." And he sends me a link on how to create a new Apple ID, which isn't really what I wanted to know. So I just asked him the question again. "Can you answer my question? Am I allowed to change my App Store location with no consequences if I live in another country?" He says, "Sure, but if you move to a new country or region, you can update the country or region that's associated with your Apple ID." And then I wrote, "And the App Store does not need a credit card. Before you update your information, you need to spend your store credit, cancel your subscriptions, and get a payment method of your new country or region." And I knew that from the get-go. So you need to use all your payment methods. So it can be a little bit of a hassle on your account to do this, but for me, it was not a problem. And so I wrote again, so it's okay to change my App Store location without living in that country. He says, "Yes, you can change the storefront on the account." And then I explained further, just so I can crystal clearly clarify this with the gentleman. "I want to log out of my current ID, then create a new Apple ID from another country so I can install a free app and then log out of that ID and then log back in with my original ID. So the app will be on my phone. Makes sense. And since it's free, I don't need a credit card." Anyways, he replies with, "I don't believe this will work further for you. Please know that all purchases are account and country specific. Once again, once you log in with your previous Apple ID, you won't be able to access it from the application. And then I'm like, no, it works. I've done this. So I put it works. I've done it. And the app is working fine. I just want to know I can't get any trouble from Apple. So it works. I just don't want to mess up my accounts with Apple. And he writes, glad to know. Can I place you on chat hold for 2 to 3 minutes while I review this thoroughly? Is that okay with you? And yeah, I put sure, take your time, no problem. He says, thank you, of course. And then I linked him this link, which is very specific on how to change your location app store. I'll maybe remark that in my notes on the video below. And I put that this is what I have working right now, and I want to know if I'm violating any Apple rules. And they're telling me, he's just telling me to wait. I'm sure he's checking with somebody else on this, so he's clear. Anyways, he says, thanks for being on hold. I say, you're welcome. He says, can you help me with the application name for it? And now I got a little bit freaked out because I'm like, I don't want my account to get screwed up. Anyways, I wanted to be transparent, so I put, sure, FarmVille 3 Animals. And I sent him the little icon app on my phone with this is how it looks. And I wrote, it's working fine on my iPhone, but it's not in the Canadian App Store. It's only on the Australian App Store. So when I switched my Apple ID and location, I was able to install it. And when I need to update it, I just log back and forth. And then he writes, okay, if the application works, no need to worry about it. You can still access it. So then I write, great. So I'm not violating any Apple rules. He writes, yes, if you need to update it, you have to sign in with the respective Apple ID for it. And I wrote, just to clarify really crystal clear, I don't want to have my Apple ID suspended for doing something wrong since I don't live in Australia, but I'm using the App Store location. He writes, sure, no need to worry on it. I wrote, okay, thanks so much for your help. He writes, you're welcome. And I just explained further that I just use a local business address when Apple wanted my billing location with the postal code from Australia. Again, I don't want to break any rules, but I really wanted to play the game. And he writes, being a gamer myself, I certainly understand how important it is for you to proceed further in the game. No worries on it. Is there anything else I may assist you today? I write, no, that's it. Thanks for your help. I'm glad to know I'm not violating any rules. Have a great night. He writes, glad to know. Have a great evening. It was a pleasure chatting with you today. And then I wrote, is it okay if I leave this chat open so I can review it? And then he disconnected the chat for me. So anyways, there you have it. It's a 7.5 minute video on getting permission to install FarmVille 3 from a country that you don't live in. I would suggest that you still do this at your own risk. There is lots of people on the internet who say you're not supposed to do this, but I figured I would go straight to Apple and ask them the question so that there wasn't any guessing, I guess. So for me, if I have an issue, I can go back and rely on this chat to explain to Apple that I was given permission to do it. And if you would like the same permission, I would suggest you do the exact same thing. If you get something different, maybe leave a post in the comments. And yeah, so without further ado, happy installing. It is a little complicated to get done, but as you can see from my conversation with Apple, shouldn't be a problem. You don't have to use a fake name. Use your real name. Use an address from Australia of a public place, like a public post office. And, next time you're in Australia, you can go pick up your Zynga mail. Anyways, that's it for today, everyone. Have a super day. We see you on the Z Farm. Bye, everyone.